What car will you never buy again? Story 1. Toyota, because I'm pretty sure mine will last the rest of my life with no problems, lol. I took my 2002 Corolla to the mechanic thinking it was going to cost me a fortune. $60 later, and the fella told me to never get rid of it. My partner's father recently passed away and we are keeping his car. It's a 2010 Corolla with only 27k miles on it. We had to fix a cracked axle and get new tires, but she is good to go now. After we get it detailed, it will look like it just rolled off the line. Thanks for the great car, Martin. You're not wrong. My friend's mom drives a 2006 Land Cruiser, 250k miles on it, and it drives more or less the same as it did new, with nothing other than regular maintenance. I'm not a big fan of Japanese cars, but Toyota builds a hell of a car. They'll get you from A to B reliably for years, which is exactly what most people want/need from a car, so they deserve their popularity. 2021 Land Cruiser over here. These SOBs are built like armored personnel carriers. They are the official field vehicle of the UN, who use them worldwide in the harshest environments. They don't have the latest whiz-bang glass cockpit Teslatron interior accoutrements, but that's the point. They have physical buttons and analog dials that just work. Change the fluids, tires, battery regularly and they will outlive you and your children. Story 2. A Toyota Prius. I bought a 2007 and told my wife I'd drive it until it died. That thing would not die. I mean, it never even needed repairs. Tires, oil changes, wiper blades, and bulbs. I really wanted a new car. Thankfully, she agreed to let me sell it. At 280k plus miles, it still drove like new. I'll never make that mistake again. Ha, mine will outlive me out of spite. You cannot kill them. My 2014 has 210,000 miles on it. Original hybrid battery. At one point, I was severely depressed and poor and didn't change the oil for 2 years. I just added oil when it got low. I swear it thrives on neglect. It still runs perfectly. I saw a Prius and thought, WTF would the problem be? I've easily had over 30 cars and the Prius has by far been the best vehicle I've ever owned. I've barely put any money into it whatsoever. My last full set of tires cost a little over $200. I prefer driving it over my E60 M5. The M5 is a young, dirty lady, but the Prius is the wife. Stability, carries its own weight, has paid for itself 10 times over in savings, and it actually isn't horrible to drive. I'm the only person I know who has had a rough go with the Prius. Bought used at 55k miles. Twice before 100k miles, the water pump for the inverter failed. Right after 100k miles, the battery failed. There were other random electrical issues, such as the dashboard periodically not responding. When I finally ditched it, it was because the check engine light came on intermittently and I couldn't pass an emissions test. Story 3. Jeeps. Just expect every problem, and the worst part is that they never have to improve nor address the quality issues in Jeeps. Ownership and the desire for ownership are just a cultural phenomenon. The sales aren't declining anytime soon. They ride terribly, aren't safe, they are cramped, they have poor quality, and are somewhat underpowered, and you must have a crane set up in your garage to utilize its best feature, i.e. removing the top. I guess all the little duckies must be worth it. 2018 JL. New gen for whatever that's worth. Wrangler Unlimited owner here. I bought it used 3 years in and have put 60k miles on it, sitting right at 90k on the ODO. By all means, it's a cool car, always wanted one and I love it to death. However, the crap quality shows real quick. Mismatched body paint, fading panels, the door hinges that stick out literally beg to be pelted by rocks, and I'll have to have those paint corrected before selling. 2 holes in my premium soft top I had to patch, the top literally just wore through on the metal it slides on, and I don't run this car hard. 95% of those miles and wear is from daily highway and paved road use. FCA is replacing my clutch due to the recall, so at least I won't be out of pocket due to that. The ducks are cool, it's definitely a fun car. The Wrangler is essentially a 40 to 60k Lego kit if customization is your thing. Anything can be done to it. It will tackle some nice terrain. The removable doors and roof, soft top on mine, are a nice touch for the warmer months, and it's a head turner, but this will likely be the last Jeep I own. Planning on selling before 120k miles if I make it that far without any major issues. Story 4. PT Cruiser. Almost everything went wrong with my lemon yellow PT Cruiser. Just a few fun things. The back door button didn't work and I had to pull back the paneling to access a release from the inside. I didn't dare tap my horn as it would frequently just stay honking constantly until I turned off the car. The battery leaked constantly for some reason, so I had to disconnect it every time I parked. The gas gauge stopped working around half empty. Also owned a new off-the-lot cruiser, 2001 Shale Green Limited Edition. Alloy wheels always leaked tire air because they were uneven, the spark plugs under the manifold, and requires dealership labor to have changed. The timing belt went at 40K. The serpentine belt went twice at 25K and 60K. Speakers on the hatchback had a loose wire that cut in and out randomly. Blind spots galore. The radiator was garbage, but my favorite. The car would just stop running while you're doing 40 to 50 miles per hour. Just stop. I'd have to turn the ignition key again to start it back up. Only automatic that ever did that. I still see some running and always wonder how. I was given one by my grandmother and God, I hated that car. Had very similar problems and ended up with a leaky gasket at less than 100k miles. Drove the thing to death though. Despite the gasket issues, that car got me from Michigan to Florida, then Florida to Texas in one piece. It's a miracle it didn't leave me stranded. The Texas summers finally did it though. That thing just guzzled water by the gallon at the end. RIP Goldie PT Hahn. Story 5. I've spent nearly 15 years working as a parts advisor selling parts for Suzuki, Subaru, Jeep, Chrysler, Dodge, Fiat, Alfa, Hyundai, Kia, and GM. From that, I will never buy anything American, European, and/or Korean made. I will only buy Japanese cars. This is my experience as well. I've owned various Subaru WRX throughout the years and have never had any issues whatsoever aside from the seat heater switches breaking or the windshield wiper fluid bottle cracking. Similarly, my girlfriend has owned a Honda for 6 years and hasn't had one single issue. I'm sure these aren't common, but it still wins me over that QC and R&D are superior in Japan. Honestly, I think some American cars are quite good. The problem is that it depends on the model, whereas most Japanese cars are consistently good. My problem with Toyotas, and to a lesser extent Hondas, is that a disproportionate number of their models are ugly and boring to drive, with limited exceptions. That said, I own a Honda Odyssey, which I love, but it requires more maintenance than I would expect. Let us hope that Japanese brands can actually make some decent EV cars then. What makes Japanese cars good today is a huge reason why they are behind in the EV race. They prize quality and stability over innovation. In my opinion, China will end up dominating the car industry as they have made insane progress in EV technologies. They are already shaping Europe, and once they can enter the US, it's going to be really hard for Japan to compete if they don't get their act together now. I had a Scion TC for 10 years and loved it. However, I noticed it made a weird noise related to the transmission after several thousand miles, manual. Only had service at the dealership and they never said anything, so I figured it was fine. Fast forward to 10 years in, only about 70k miles. That noise was worse, and it turned out I needed a new transmission. Toyota quoted me like 5k to fix it, on a car worth a few grand at the time. What sucked was apparently it was a known issue that Toyota would fix it if it was before 60k miles, but I didn't know. That experience jaded me with Toyota. Story 6. Not me, but my parents. Dodge. My parents had a Dodge Caliber that had so many issues with the transmission, axles, engine, exhaust, and so much more that it made me never want to own a Dodge when I do buy a car one day. I've heard other Dodge owners having issues too. As a devout Mopar enthusiast, I can tell you to never buy the base model when buying a 4-cylinder Dodge. Always go for a premium trim, preferably the SRT. Dodge's manufacturing quality controls were very loose for a long time, but premium packages always got more final inspection because they knew they were going to be driven harder earlier, which you also have to watch for those ones being flogged out. My Dodge caught fire while turned off in park because of a faulty PCM that overloaded the alternator and didn't stop overloading the alternator until I completely disconnected the rear battery. My Jeep could only go up to 50 miles per hour or over 70 miles per hour, or else the engine would skip and shut off at high speeds, which turned out to be a known issue that they would cover repairs for. I will not buy American cars ever again. I have a 2019 Dodge Ram, and I'm not sure what they make those CV boots from, but they are of terrible quality. 2 rips every single year. I don't treat it like crap either, like I did with my '08 Ford Ranger. Also of note, I'm a seasonal worker, so when the dealership tells me, oh, that's just from usual wear and tear from a cold winter, I call BS. I'm currently driving less than 1 hour a week. That's a serious quality control issue when I replace one in October and it's screwed by May. Story 7. Jeep. Owned a Cherokee and always had suspension boots that cracked and leaked oil, and the electrical and coolant systems were constantly on the fritz. Parents' Cherokee had so many recalls it was basically a different car from what came from the factory. Over $13,000 in one repair instance. My friend's Wrangler literally died in an intersection within a week of purchase while he was driving it. The angle of the windshields makes them more prone to rock chips and cracks. Uconnect was super late in supporting Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, and older models were left out. The Wagoneer embodies everything wrong with American car market's trends. Too big, but not where it matters. Too expensive, too slow, too inefficient. Oh, and their stupid experiment to try out new gear shifter designs resulted in the accidental death of Anton Yelchin. I think they've gone down in quality. In the 1990s, we had 2 Grand Cherokees, 4x4 with a large engine. Best cars we've ever had. Plowed through heavy, wet snow, plus hardly any repairs were needed. We drove the last one until it needed some sprucing up cosmetically. It just needed a new starter. I loved those cars. I hear nothing but disappointment about Jeeps these days. As for Ford, we've had nothing but trouble with Ford. Jeep is consistently rated as one of the least reliable car brands in America. Their vehicles are built like crap and are also shockingly expensive for some inexplicable reason. I rented a Wrangler during a trip to Hawaii a year ago, a new model with less than 10,000 miles on it. Yet, the thing rattled like it was 20 years old. Embarrassing. I have absolutely no idea why anyone buys those pieces of crap anymore. There are so many better options. I had a brand new door Jeep Wrangler Sahara that was the funniest thing I've ever driven. Then, the cam cracked at about 5,000 miles and I had to fight with Chrysler for weeks to get them to honor the warranty. They replaced the entire engine. Then it started to speed wobble on the freeway at about 70 miles per hour and leak oil in my driveway. The thing almost killed me. Never again. Story 8. Heard nothing but good things from Honda, Toyota, and Mazda. I have only ever driven Hondas. 88 Accord, 87 Civic Hatchback, 93 Accord, 02 Civic, 12 CRV, 20 CRV. I've never had a breakdown or mechanical issue, only ever preventative maintenance. The older cars had some electrical issues, but those cleared up with the 02 Civic. I would own a Toyota or Mazda too, but see no reason to buy anything but Japanese. My parents always bought Fords, including a crapbox 93 Tempo, and car ownership was so disappointing and complicated for them I internalized that from a young age and will never buy domestic. My 2012 Honda Civic got 195,000 miles and 0 issues. Being in Minnesota, I put winter tires on it and it was unstoppable. Like a little snowmobile, bought it used for 12,000 and sold it 2 years ago for 6,500. Upgraded to a 2022 Honda Civic Hatch and absolutely love it. I'll drive it to the 200,000 mark as well, if not longer. Such a fun car to drive. Sadly, I just totaled my 2003 Accord yesterday. Only had 170,000 miles on it and I definitely would have gotten a lot more out of it. Bought it at 94,000 miles and have only had a couple of issues that weren't directly my fault. And all the regular maintenance I did on it was super easy compared to every other car I've had except for a Civic I used to have, which was also a perfect car. One of them was that the radio didn't really work when I bought it, but I was already planning on installing a new stereo with speakers and subwoofers, so that didn't matter. The other was the CV axle broke, but that was also probably mostly my fault. I was told it probably happened from accelerating too hard. The only thing I will ever complain about with either of the Hondas was the cruise control regulator thingy got stuck once when I was on the interstate, and so it was stuck on full rev until I could stop enough to turn the engine off. It was super scary because I gave the accelerator a little gas when my cruise control was on to pass someone, and all of a sudden it was trying trying to go full speed out of nowhere. I had to basically stand on the brake pedal to get it to slow down and stop, which wasn't easy when I was already going 70 miles per hour when it got stuck. My wife told me when we bought a Honda HR-V in late 2015 that we would have to hold onto it for 10 years before I could sell it. Now, 8 years later, my wife said it's still going well, we can hold onto it a bit longer. The only thing I really miss out on is CarPlay, and I can get a replacement head unit that supports that for under $1,000. Also, I want an EV, but I can wait a little longer for more choices to become available and prices to drop. Story 9. A freaking Buick. I'm a simple gal. I ask two things about my car: to stop and go. Totally disagree, but I had a 90s version of a Buick LeSabre with over 140,000 miles on it that never gave me trouble. That baby had a Firebird engine in it. I would pull up to a light next to a sports car in my slate green Grandma Special, rev my engine a little and look over, get that racing confirmation nod and smoke them off the line every time. I had a 98 Park Ave with that engine. The thing was absolutely bulletproof. It was my first car, and as a young kid, I never really took care of it. It started running like crap, and I never took the time to look into it. Figured it was near the end of its life, and I was just going to ride it out. Like, would lose speed uphill kind of running rough. It always fired up and ran as long as it had gas, though. Run it for 6 to 7 months like that. Turns out 2 coil packs went bad, and a mouse made a nest in the air filter. $85, and a couple of hours later, it ran absolutely mint until I sold it. The front ball joint was getting bad, and I didn't want to deal with it. I missed that car. My first car was a green Buick Regal 2000. I drove it until all the shocks were shot, the speakers were busted, the AC didn't work, the back passenger window had to be taped up or it would fall into the door. The front cup holders were holes between the seats and the driver's side window wouldn't go down unless you tiled the button down into the door. The odometer stopped working at 250k. The catalytic converter finally fell off and I had to say goodbye to my death trap. We had some good times. Story 10. I will only buy Honda or Toyota, and even then the models will be limited. European cars are not only expensive to buy, they are expensive to maintain. American cars are fine if you don't mind buying new ones again before they get to 100k miles. These are broad generalizations, but they hold true in my experience. No more Hondas for us. We have owned 6 of them over the years. The last one, 2015 Accord, was not a good car. All kinds of problems we never had with prior Hondas. Needed a new car during COVID. Local Honda dealers were asking for more than 5k over MSRP for the new cars because the market supported it. Mazda didn't. They stuck to MSRP. Just bought a Mazda 6 months ago and we love it. Screw Honda and their price gouging dealers. My problem with Honda is that every one of their cars feels like it was made for a 20-year-old getting a first car. I test drove the Civic and the whole experience made me feel ancient. I liked it, but it felt like I was putting on a leather jacket, getting a vape pen and acting like I still knew which bars were fun to go to. I need my car to feel more like a polo shirt, chinos, and a canceled Friday night plan because my back is acting up. I'm all in on Honda Acura. Granted, I've had a few issues with electronics over the years, but nothing major and certainly not to the degree that people report on their brands. I used to own a Toyota Tacoma that I bought new and treated very well, but the engine randomly decided to throw a piston rod and destroy itself at 120k miles. Also, I don't like the styling of Toyotas nearly as much. I just bought a 2008 Honda Odyssey. It's well used, but only 135k miles on it. I think I got a good deal. I had the same year and model before. I loved it. I'm hoping it lasts me a while. I'm not going to use it tons, but I can't change the clock or date on the GPS. It's 20 years off, and from what I read, it can't be fixed. I guess if that's the worst I have to deal with, I'll be lucky. Story 11. I know, no surprise, Land Rover. It was my wife's dream car. What a POS. Came here to say Range Rover. I bought out my lease last year because it made more sense than buying a new car in this market. I pay for an extended warranty and pray every day as I inch towards that miracle mileage number where it all goes to shit and costs 50k to fix. It's a beautiful looking car, but Jesus, it's not worth it. The sales price is ridiculous, but the maintenance and repair costs are absurd. FYI, I only have a Range Rover because the dealer gave us the friends and family PIN rate, so the deal was amazing when we got got it. I made the terribly dumb decision to buy a used one with 117k miles on it. It overheated the day I drove it off the lot and needed a new engine. No warranty. Please be kind. In retrospect, I know what a colossal mistake this was. I've always wanted a Range Rover, and the Carfax said it had 2 owners, had never been out of state I live in terms of ownership, and had always been serviced at the dealership. It seemed like a safe bet, and it was beautiful. By the time I was finally able to offload it, I was not sorry to see her go. God, I hated that car. Apparently the trick to Rover ownership in the US is to buy it from CarMax and buy and constantly renew the extended warranty. Jalopnik did a running series on this a couple of years ago for $3K in warranty costs. CarMax paid out like $28K in repairs. Interesting to me is that my UK coworkers love them and consider them to be solid and reliable. I wonder how the wheels fell off, pun intended, with the American market. Story 12. Every Chevy I've ever had has constantly weird issues, mostly with overheating. I'm on my 3rd Silverado. The first one was a 1988 that made it 450k miles before it started having electrical issues. The second one made it 290k miles and got traded for the 2008 sitting outside now. The current one has 210k miles at the moment, but has never had any major issues. Just a few sensors, all cheap and easy to replace myself and the usual maintenance/wear items. Personally, I think Chevy has made both ends of the quality spectrum, like most manufacturers. However, even on their nicer vehicles, you need to be on top of the maintenance, compared to some Toyota and Honda cars that seemingly never die no matter the abuse. My first car was a 2007 Chevy Aveo, which I got at 18 years old. I'm car part illiterate, so excuse me if I'm getting some of the terms mixed up, but this is what happened, and then what we had to do to fix it. At 30,000, the timing belt snapped, and in doing so, it bent all the pistons. The solution was replacing the engine block. This was within a year of buying it. A year or so later, this happened again. Timing belt snapped, bent pistons, and a whole new engine was needed. I ended up selling it for $400 and paid $6,000. I had about 60k miles on it. I think they discontinued this model, and none exist on the road because they've all been reduced to scraps. My first car was also an Aveo. The car was like 4 years old when I got it, but the chrome finish on the door handles was already chipping off. After getting cut on it a few times, we had to duct tape them for safety. Besides refusing to start several times, it also stalled on me like 3 times while I was driving. It is not fun to lose power steering/brakes while going downhill with no warning. The actual power the car could put out was sad enough that you basically had to go pedal to the metal just to get up the highway speeds in a reasonable amount of time. You could even do it for 4 or 5 seconds when joining roads before you'd hit 45 miles per hour. I got pulled over in it once because a cop thought I was going 15 over right outside my neighborhood. He heard the crying sounds of the car and assumed I was trying to race it. He ended up letting me go after I told him it was physically impossible for that particular car to get up to speed, let alone 15 over, in the space between my neighborhood and where he pulled me over. Story 13. Audi. Great car when it worked, but my 1-year-old A4 was towed to the shop 3 times in 1 year with ignition and fuel injection problems. Weird. My dad had an A4 from 2005 and put on more than 300k kilometers, 186,000 miles, and only at the very least it started indicating a possible fault to the transmission. I guess the quality dropped. Post 2012, they're actually fantastic cars. I have an A3, 4, and 5. They all are great cars, and never had a serious problem. I only did routine maintenance. The biggest problem is that Audi recommends changing your oil around 10,000 miles, and most people follow that. In reality, you should still change it between 4,000 to 5,000. I have had 9 Audis, sometimes 2 at once. 1979, 1982, 1987, 1987, 1988, 1990, 1994, 2001, 2013. I've driven at least 1.5 million miles in them. They have only gotten better over the years. All were excellent cars except the 1988. That one had been in so much snow and salt that the wiring was totally corroded. The key is to find an honest, fair, competent mechanic who knows how to fix reasonably priced parts, keeping up with the service and avoiding the dealers. I had a coworker who owned a 2001 Audi A4. He said it had the poorest reliability of any car he'd ever owned before, and would never own another Audi again. I've had 2 Audi cars, one for 3 years that I traded in, no problems, and one that is turning 7 17 years old this summer, 99.5k miles. My old A3 looks great still and has been supremely reliable. Best car I've ever owned. Plus it's super fun to drive. Seriously impressive torque. Only 2 liters, but you'd swear it was larger. I wish it got better gas mileage, but I don't commute to work any longer, so it's not too painful on fuel costs. I had a 2003 A4 Avant, and I only had one problem with it that I could actually blame VW for, a dead fuel pump. Every other problem I had could be pinned on the supplier. First and foremost was the great 1.8-liter turbo ignition coil debacle. 3 went on me at once, and I literally got the last 3 the shop had in stock, and we all knew the 4th was only a matter of time. And it also ate rear brake light bulbs like popcorn, another botched innovation. My cousin had a 2002 BMW 5 Series, and he had the same problem with brake lights constantly burning out. His dealer told him Bosch was turning into Lucas with frightening speeds. Story 14. All GM cars. This situation applied to the GMC Acadia. Not that I owned one, but my dad owns one. A very common issue that GM has acknowledged and refused to fix for free with the 2016 to 2019 model year Acadias is the shift to park message showing every time you shut the car off. Basically, there is a chip in the shifter which is supposed to detect if the car is parked, and after 60,000 miles or more, this chip fails and the car is unable to detect that it is properly in park. It was very difficult for us to figure out because the battery would never shut off, and we found out that we have to flick the button on the shifter that allows you to shift gears every time you turn off the car, so that the message goes away. One time, my dad forgot to do that, and the car battery was left on overnight and the battery died. He tried jumping it, and was all sleepy-headed and messed up and put the jumper cables on wrong and fried his battery, so he had to get it towed for a replacement. The issue persists, and there are a few known fixes, but as for the actual chip, it's near impossible to fix because there is such a wide number of replacement chips available, but it is hard to narrow down which one is the correct one. The fact that this is a defect on the vehicle and it's GM's fault and they refuse to fix this for free is astonishing to me. This reflects really poorly on behalf of the GM. Any GM product. Used to buy them all the time. Last one was a Blazer, years ago. It was okay, but not great. Then it developed an ABS fault. ABS would kick in on dry pavement and you'd sail right through stop signs trying to stop, standing on the brake. There was a recall on the ABS controller. GM Canada, where we are, said they were replacing units in the US, but wouldn't honor the Canada recall until the US was completed. I said to the head office, but we have a problem. They didn't care. I told them they lost a customer for life. They didn't care. The dealer disconnected the ABS until they got parts in. Eventually, they replaced the module. It lasted 14 months and then I quit. They wanted $2,600 to replace it. We replaced it all right, the whole vehicle. Never looked at GM again. We bought 2 GM cars, a 2014 Chevy Cruze and then a 2015 Chevy Sonic. The Cruze had the 1.4 turbo and the Sonic had the 1.8. Both of the same engine family though. Anyway, it was like clockwork with those cars. 1 month, the Cruze would be out because the water pump cracked. Next month, the same issue with the Sonic. 1 month, the coolant leaked in the Cruze. Next month, the same thing with the Sonic, in the same exact place. 1 month, AC goes out in the Cruze. The next month, the same with the Sonic. It was insane. Most of it was covered under warranty, but with the cars constantly in the shop, we were having to find other modes of transportation and it was getting expensive. The second my Sonic was paid off, I went and traded it in at a local used shop that specializes in trucks. I bought a 2010 F-150 in 2019, which I still drive today, and I haven't had a single issue with it, and it's coming up on 200k miles now. My wife saved up for a bit, then sold her car to a local teenage girl who was getting her first car. Then we went and bought her a 2023 Honda CR-V, which has been an amazing vehicle. We've had it a couple years now, and not one problem. I had a GM Saturn, Lemon POS, which they never fixed. I'd like to think I had a hand in their demise. I never missed a chance to tell my story. It finally died, and I drove it stuck in 3rd gear to the dealer. When I used my turn signal, the radio blinked too. Since it was, by then, a few hundred miles out of warranty, they gave me a choice. Buy another vehicle, or they would give me a ride home. Not much of a choice, so I bought a used GM vehicle. While I was waiting, I overheard the service manager say, "I'm gonna shove this up Saturn's ass." Yeah, fix it for them, but not for me. And yes, they called security on me. Story 15. Anything Hyundai or Kia. I don't like having my car stolen because the car makers are too stupid to make a security system that can't easily be bypassed by simply taking apart the steering column and using a damn USB cord to start the car. Even worse is that the Kia boys are too stupid to tell which Kias are vulnerable. My buddy's Sorento got hit despite having an immobilizer, and because all of the break-ins, it took him months to get a new steering column. My Sonata was broken into, and the steering column was dismantled in November by some wannabe thieves. It's still in the shop because of back-ordered parts. Thanks a lot, Hyundai. I bought a Kia a couple of years back. When the chip shortage was happening, my car completely broke. I shopped around as long as I could and got a 15 Kia. Within 1 year, the engine blew. I bought it used and was told there were no recalls. I checked and there were none. It still happened. So thankful Kia covered it under a warranty I didn't know I had. Now insurance for me is raised because of the thefts. It has raised $150 per year in the past 2 years with no changes to the policy. I have reached out for quotes from other companies and have been turned down for coverage. Story 16. A Ford Focus. I drive a 2017 Fiesta and I'd absolutely never buy Ford again because of this vehicle. Positive battery terminal fuse module is about $40 of plastic and metal, and they'll only sell to you as part of a $450 engine compartment wiring assembly, even though the little piece is easily separated from it and is the most likely point of failure of the whole assembly. Hopefully you've got a junkyard nearby with one that hasn't already been harvested out, or you can find one on eBay and wait for it to ship from a few thousand miles away while your car gets to sit in your driveway being useless. Don't know why they thought this was a good way to design a vehicle, but it makes me question their design judgment across all of their vehicles. Buying this car was the biggest mistake. 8 times I had to take the damn thing in for transmission, and apparently they just put a band-aid on it instead of actually fixing it. The cheap plastic on the front one day just decided to break off, so I was holding it together with duct tape, had the gas tank crack, which I didn't know was a thing because nobody in my family had ever had that happen to them. Pretty much every time I drove somewhere, I feared it would crap out on me. Barely got anything for it when I traded it in for a Toyota. Thanks for watching until the end. If you have a similar story to these that you'd like to share with us, please leave it in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, please leave us a like and subscribe. For more videos like this one right now, please stop by our channel. Thanks again, and see you next time.